This is Frank Consella, and this is the Crested Butte is Home podcast. And this week, my guest is Allie from Big Al's Bicycle Heaven. And we just had the Fat Bike World Championships here in Crested Butte. So Allie and I talk quite a bit about fat biking, about the gear, and also about what fat biking has meant for her shop and in terms of staying busier in the winter months where it used to be a really slow time before fat bikes started to become popular a few years ago. As always, you can visit CrestedButteIsHome.com to catch other episodes of this podcast and subscribe. And let's go ahead and get on with this interview. My guest this week on the Crested Butte is Home podcast is Allison Fuchs. And so tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and how you got to Crested Butte.
Oh, man. I am originally from Omaha, Nebraska. Got here via a few years in Southern California, but I grew up, I was lucky enough to have a friend whose folks owned a home here when I was growing up in Nebraska.
Okay.
So my friend Sarah Keene, who still lives here also. We both moved here sort of permanently without a plan 20 years ago.
Nice.
And we're both still here, which is pretty cool. So her folks built a home here in the 70s, and I was lucky enough to be a Nebraska kid that got to go on ski vacations to Crested Butte.
With your friend.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
You were the tag-along kid to keep her occupied.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. And, growing up in Nebraska, Colorado, I always say, is like kind of the closest, like really cool place you can go on vacation.
Yeah.
So we did. My family did. I grew up going to Breckenridge and other ski resorts also. But that is how I was introduced to Crested Butte, was coming here in winter with the Keens, and then traveling through in summer on our own family vacations, heading out to California where we had family. We'd make a pit stop because we knew we had friends here. So.
Right.
So that's how I was introduced to Crested Butte. I always wanted to live in the mountains, I thought, when I was a kid, and then didn't do it. For college, it was either Colorado or California, and I chose the beach.
What college did you go to then?
I went to Loyola Marymount University.
Okay.
So I went to LA instead of the mountains. I had reasons then. Can't really remember what they are now, but and I had family out in California, so it was another place I was familiar with, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never did it. I never had done the mountain thing, and didn't go to school in Colorado. And my dad was living in Denver. He's still there, and was about 3 or 4 years out of college and kind of floating from job to job.
What kind of jobs were you doing?
I have a degree in graphic design.
Cool.
And I really just wanted to be an artist, honestly. So I was an art major. Kind of got pushed into graphic design because that's how I was supposed to be able to get a job. And I did. And I worked in my field at various kind of random jobs. Everything from doing newspaper ad design to working for a comic book company.
Okay.
Which was a pretty cool job. But I realized that I didn't want to sit in front of a computer screen for the rest of my life. Is why it was like the creative side of it was cool.
Yeah.
And that's what I craved, but it didn't turn out to be like the cool, I wasn't ending up having those like cool graphic design jobs that I dreamed of, like making commercials and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just kind of craving change.
Gotcha. So you just moved to Crested Butte, eventually deciding that was just the change that needed to be made?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of. Was going through a rough patch in San Diego, not loving my job and not knowing what to do. And my friend Sarah had been living here for the summers and then going back to Nebraska for winters, just kind of sort of floating between jobs a few years kind of post-college. Yeah. And I called her up and said, well, I'm thinking about moving to Colorado, and like, I'll come to Crested Butte if you'll stay, have you ever thought of staying for the winter? And she kind of said, well, I'll stay if you come. And I literally put in notice at my job and my apartment and moved here in my little Volkswagen Jetta. With two of my friends from college drove me out. in the fall of 99.
Fall 99.
Yep.
That's awesome. You guys made a pact to move here, and here you both are still, which is even better.
Yep.
Nice. So, so you grew up coming here to ski. Were you coming here in the summer? Were you biking back then too? Or was that something you picked up after you moved? Or how'd that all work?
That is something I picked up when I moved here.
Okay.
I mean, I loved to ride a bike as a kid, but I was a kid in Nebraska. I mean, that meant like kind of riding around.
Right.
You know.
The neighborhood.
The neighborhood. You know, it wasn't like growing up in Crested Butte, you know, and being able to be on the mountain bike team. So, in summer, no, we were just kind of doing we'd hike and drive out to Gothic and do all. I remember doing stuff like that. But I don't really ever remember. I remember riding like townies around town in groups of teenagers.
Okay.
when I was here,
which was probably super fun
which
too.
Which was very fun, yes. But yeah, no, the mountain biking part of it came that following spring.
Okay, and how'd that go? Did you know someone who was really into it, or how'd you get into biking then?
Well, I always say I was lucky that my friends were mountain bikers, because you know, spring rolled around, and here we were just newbies. You know, I mean, we didn't know how to be mountain girls or whatever. You know, I moved here and snowboarded, and that was super fun, and lived the ski bum life. And spring rolled around, and it was kind of like, well, what do we do now? Like, what's our next? Now it's not ski season anymore. Like, now what do we do? And so, I think my friends and, you know, someone I was dating at the time were mountain bikers. So started getting introduced to the sport that way.
Yeah, and I think that's how most people do. Did you like it right at first? Because I feel like a lot of people do not. It's hard.
It's terrifying.
Okay.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I don't think I liked mountain biking for 2 years.
But you just did it because you felt like you needed to?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny to look back on that. Sarah laughs at me. She has a story she tells about when I threw my bike on Ferris Creek.
Everyone's thrown their bike at some point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've gotten smarter now. I don't usually abuse my bike anymore.
Yeah.
But I stomp around a lot sometimes. I remember my first ride on Strand Hill. And we used to always just go up the road. You know, I think I went into it, you know, I was like, oh, well, I mean, I'd always been athletic in my life. You know, I mean, I was living in LA at the beach. That meant like longboard, skateboarding on the boardwalk and, you know, maybe going running and like maybe going to the gym. It's like a totally different story. Getting on a mountain bike. But, you know, I remember going into it thinking like, oh, I got this. Strong, fit, you know, and, you know, like, not even halfway up Strand Hill, I wanted to cry, I think, because it was so hard, you know. And at that point, it wasn't even the hard, scary part of actually being on the trail. It was just, this is hard. Like, this is physically, really physically challenging. Yeah, and I mean, it's just I tell people in the bike shop all the time, like, who you can tell have been, like, kind of freaked out by learning how to mountain bike. And I'm like, man, it's hard and scary when you start. It just is. I mean, it was for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things that it's like the more you do it, the easier it gets, which makes it hard because if you're not having a ton of fun and it's really hard, it's hard to do it a bunch, and then
And I mean, I think that is what happened for me. Is I enjoyed it enough that I kept doing it, even though I think it was challenging and scary. But I think the challenge, I sort of rose to the challenge. I wanted to be good at it, I just wasn't yet.
Yeah.
And then I just had that moment. I remember just, you will have, I always tell people too, like, I had a moment where all of a sudden something happens. You do it enough. You spend enough time on that bike and on that trail that it becomes a little less scary and a lot more fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that starts to just balance.
Yeah.
You know, the fear factor goes away for whatever reason. You've practiced enough, you know, you've ridden enough. And once the fear factor goes away, you're having a lot more fun doing it. Yeah. And that's what happened for me.
Why do you think this town, why is Crested Butte so obsessed with bikes?
I don't know. I mean, because it has been well before my time, right? I mean, it is just a true, like, cycling community. And, I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes it super cool.
Yeah.
And sort of fascinates kind of like outsiders, visitors. I mean,
Sure.
I have people come in the shop and they're like, "What? Why are there so many bicycles?" Like, well, we ride bikes here. Like, well, are they all someone's, or do they?
Exactly, because none of them are locked.
Really does, I mean, it really does like kind of like blow people's minds who are just like not from places like this, which is pretty cool too.
It is. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's because it's a mountain town and we're outdoorsy and we're athletic and we're sort of eco-minded. Is that we're conscious of the environment, and so it makes sense to ride a bike instead of drive your car if you're going somewhere that you can do that. And I think that adds to all of it.
Well, we talked about it a little bit, but so you are the owner of Big Al's. So when did you open Big Al's?
Big Al's opened in June of 2006.
Okay. And what had you been doing for work on those previous few years then?
I had kind of the typical mountain town jobs. I cooked right when I got here. My friends like to laugh at me about that too, because I had somewhat of a plan when I moved here. I grew up in the restaurant industry, so I've always loved to cook, and all of a sudden I decided maybe I wanted to go to culinary school and be a chef. Even though I'd already gotten my college degree, but it was like, I don't know.
They're related though.
Yeah. And so I thought, well, I'll go that can be like my somewhat plan for this move to the mountains on a whim is I'll go put myself in a kitchen and decide if I really want to do that. And I made that decision, and that decision was no. I love to cook for friends and family, but I do not like the pressure of cooking like in a commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
But I did for many years. I worked at the Woodstone Grill. That was my first job here. And it was a lot of fun. Then I also painted houses for many years.
Yeah.
Using
that art degree.
I was. I mean, those gingerbread posts on the buildings around here, I can walk through town and point at a few that I painted. But and I just fell into that job because a friend of mine's parents' house was being painted that fall, and they wanted the job done. And their guy needed help. And I needed a job because I don't know if you remember if you were here that year, but it was really warm and dry, and they actually postponed the opening of the mountain, if I'm remembering that correct. They postponed my job.
Okay.
I know that because I was here and I was had been hired at the mountain to cook at the Woodstone, and all of a sudden it was it was like hot and dry.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, as we know, people were still painting as fast as they could before the snow fell, and, we were all waiting for our jobs at the resort. And so I ended up being a painter, and I probably painted for 7 years.
After that,
and bartended and cooked in between. I bartended at the end, like my last job, like while I was writing the business plan for Big Al's, I was tending bar at the Timberline.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, like you said, typical mountain town jobs.
Yep. Exactly.
All right. So talk about that starting Big Al's then, and those first couple of years then.
Yeah. Well, it was a dream of mine to open a bike shop for years. Obviously, after I got into the sport, I started traveling to ride like we all do, and I will never forget going to Moab for the first time and seeing all the various shops and like going into them and just thinking like, wow, this place is really cool. This is really rad. I love the vibe in here. And, it just kind of sparked that dream of opening a shop. And, as I traveled to other places and experienced different bike shops in different towns, that kind of desire just kind of grew. And a few other, at the time that I opened Big Al's, it was the Alpeneer, obviously, which is still here. Back alley, alternative.
Oh, were they
Klaus's
still?
shop was still open.
That was still okay.
Yeah. So
and then the mountain, obviously.
And then the mountain and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was no shop on Elk Avenue, which then I wasn't when I opened either. Yeah. But that was something that I was kind of like, how come we don't have a main, aren't we like a mountain biking mecca? Like, how come we don't have, shouldn't there be a bunch of bike shops here? Was, I think, kind of the road my brain was going down. And I'd just gotten really passionate about the sport. So I started planning. I talked about it for a long time around the fire after racing in the Mountain States Cup. Talked about opening up a bike shop for probably 2 years before my former business partner, Andy Shabo, who was also a very good friend, said to me one night, "Hey, are you serious about opening this bike shop? And if you are, do you want a partner?"
Nice.
And I was like, "Oh, wow.
It's getting real.
That's like real, you know?" And that conversation kind of turned into turning it into a real thing with him and saying, "Okay, can we do this?" And starting, writing a business plan and getting the loan and, having a lot of people think I was crazy for doing it. My family included in that. Not really knowing what I was getting myself into. We opened it within a year of that conversation. We got a loan. Didn't need too much to get it opened in our little original space over in the industrial side of town. Real estate was difficult at that time. There wasn't. My dream was to be on Elk Avenue, but there was nothing available. It was kind of in the horizontal zoning era where there were a lot of real estate offices.
Sorry.
But, it was in that era. So we ended up, in that building over kind of by the lumberyard. And really, that was probably a blessing in disguise. It
was probably low overhead.
The perfect tiny little space to open a bike shop in when you, to be totally honest, didn't really know what you were doing.
Right.
Like I knew I liked bikes.
That's all you needed to know.
We went into it. My mom was like, "Well, don't you think you should get a job at a bike shop before you open a bike shop?" And I was like, yeah, I don't know. It's probably a good idea, but I don't have time for that. Literally, that's where we were at.
How did you, you didn't sound like you really had too many sales jobs before that. And what about the mechanic side? Did you consider yourself a pretty good bike mechanic before you opened? Or?
No, that was Shabo's job.
Okay.
We both went to Barnett's, BBI, Barnett's Bicycle Institute in Colorado Springs, which is a mechanics training program.
Okay.
And we both went before we opened. Just, he did the whole program. He did consider himself, he is a better bike mechanic than I was at that time, you know. So it was still, going into it, that was his side. That was his job. So he did the whole program, though, just to, have that certification.
Sure.
And I did it just to do it and kind of throw myself in there and, see where I was at. I am not a mechanic. I'm obviously in the shop enough that I'm a really good diagnostics. I'm amazed at what I can kind of diagnose, but it's just because I see it all the time and I listen to my mechanics. I have the desire to learn it. I've always sort of wanted to be a mechanic, but it's just not my role at the shop.
Yeah.
I do too many other things.
Yeah.
So going into it, we also knew we needed to hire a good mechanic, someone with more experience than.
So you did get another mechanic.
Yes. So there were 3 of us when we started. Yeah. Okay. So there was Andy and I, and then we hired a mechanic. That was it. That was the only employee we had.
Gotcha. And I'm trying to remember, how many bikes did you have at the time for sale? Many?
No. I can't really even remember. We probably we had a rack in the back that probably held 6 on top and 6 on the bottom. Okay. So we maybe had 12, and I don't really remember having bikes in back stock.
Right.
Like I do now. And we rented bikes from the get-go, but I don't remember. I think I had 14 rental bikes, which is really funny to think about now, because now I have a lot more than that.
Okay. Gotcha. So, and it's winter now, and it's almost Fat Bike World, so we're going to talk a lot about fat biking. Mm-hmm. So, as I remember it back then, you guys mostly just locked the door through winter. Is that
pretty much
accurate?
Pretty accurate. I would be open sometimes, but especially over when we were off of Elk Avenue, it was, I don't even know why I was open, but I was sometimes, but super limited.
Yeah.
I used to joke that we had a TV in there, and I would sit on the floor sometimes with my dog in my lap and watch Oprah. And I literally would. I think we just did it because we had the time on our hands. And I mean, the first couple years I worked different winter jobs.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was just like super limited, and I'd be open like during the holidays or something. But
in this week's Crested Butte Real Estate Minute, I was in Summit County this past weekend, and it got me thinking about how much real estate there might cost compared to Crested Butte. And in Summit County, from what I could tell, the average condo is going to cost about $500,000. Here in Crested Butte, the average condo is $335,000 over the last year. And if you look at some other places, it's even more expensive. Telluride at $900,000, Aspen at $2.7 million. Snowmass at $875,000, and Vail, depending on where you were talking, Avon or in the downtown area, it's anywhere from $400 to $2+ million there as well. So all in all, there's still quite a bit of value in Crested Butte real estate, especially up at the ski area. My name is Frank Consella. This is my podcast, and my website is crestedbutterealestateagent.com. You can go there and you can contact me, and I'd love to hear from you. Let's get back to this interview with Allie.
But yeah, it's a different ballgame now.
Okay, so let's talk about, fat bikes, and maybe explain what fat bike is for somebody who doesn't totally know, but how has that changed the dynamic for you and your business?
Yeah, so fat bikes, as we call them, are designed to be ridden in snow and sand. A lot of people who have ever seen one before sometimes have seen one at the beach. Something that looks like one. I mean, the ones we have here, and it's essentially the same thing. But it's got a 4 to 5 inch wide tire, and the whole bike is designed around that super wide rim and tire that's run at low pressures. And they're amazing machines. They really low pressure in the tire. These big wide tires really just gives you kind of like a flotation on snow. So that's what a fat bike is. I know they were around longer than. There was a time when I didn't know what a fat bike was, but they existed in like Alaska, in the places they were starting to build them. But we've probably had them at the shop for, I don't know, like 6 to 8 years. Does that sound right? I don't even know. They're new. They still feel like kind of new, but like the first year that we knew what fat bikes were, I had like 3 of them.
Okay.
And let's say that was 6 years ago. So now I have, and then I had like 12 of them to rent. And then now I have, the last couple of years I've had about 20 to like 30 fat bikes in a rental and demo fleet. So definitely changed the dynamic of a bike shop in the mountains in winter. Definitely, they're fun because they bring a little more action through the shop. I mean, before fat bikes I was open, but once again, limited.
Sure.
I used to be open like Wednesday through Saturday from noon to 6. And winter was, pretty much just time to recuperate and from summer and plan for the next year. And now because of fat bikes, which is, it's a good thing. It's honestly, it's a little bit of, it's been a little bit of a challenge to figure them out as far as how much business are they really bringing, and having employees in the shop and having it be winter. And
is it mostly rentals? I'm almost picturing a lot of rentals, but I could be wrong.
It is. It's mostly, the fat bike business for me is mostly rentals.
Well, the nice thing I would think too, though, is that way you have a need for a mechanic, and then they can still tune someone's bike if they're going to the desert, and there's just more reason to have somebody around.
For sure.
Even if all that is doing is covering your overhead, at least it's giving you another reason to be open and do other things for people that they might have had a struggle with before.
It's true. Yeah, for sure. And that's nice because before, 5 years ago I would be open, but I would be the only one there, and I'm not a mechanic, and I don't love that feeling of when someone comes in and does need something, and I'm like, oh, sorry, I have a mechanic on call. That's just, for me, I've never loved, people are patient, but it's like, I'd rather just be able to be confident and say, oh yeah, no worries. Here's the guy. Here's your guy.
Yeah.
So that is nice. And it brings some action through the shop, and it definitely creates more revenue, and it's fun. People now, I feel like fat bikes have been around long enough that people should know what they are, but so many people from different parts of the country that come here have never seen anything like it in their
Sure.
life. So it's fun. It's fun to talk to people about what they are and why they look like that. And a lot of the rentals we do are just for tourists who are like, wow, that looks super cool, and I do want to ride that. Let's come down tomorrow morning before we go ski.
Yeah. Describe the growth of fat biking in Crested Butte, and especially the places you can ride and the user conflicts, which I think, from my perspective, seem like they're better, but talk about that aspect of it a little.
Yeah. It's definitely been controversial in the past. And I do agree it seems slightly less these days. And I do think that's because it has a lot to do with SIMBA, the Mountain Bike Association, having their permits to groom and doing grooming in kind of our own zones, which is kind of what, I've been saying, we as a mountain biking / fat biking community have sort of been saying for the last couple of years, like, we do know that we need to create our own zones to ride in.
Separate
from Nordic. Yeah, as opposed to, I think, a few years ago, the Nordic community thought we just wanted to ride all over their trails. And although they're very tempting, because they're very fun to ride on, and there's miles of them here, we also respect that. And it was just kind of figuring out where the fat bikes do belong. And then creating a better product out there, like the grooming. Years ago, renting the bikes was more difficult because I didn't really know where to send people. I mean, I knew, but it was limited, and I didn't know what the conditions were going to be.
Yeah.
So that's tough.
Yeah.
Like Brush Creek has always been a great ride, but before SIMBA started grooming it, it was pretty variable. I mean, you didn't know what it was going to be.
Didn't know
like.
how much snowmobile traffic, which
exactly
you really kind of needed.
Yeah, was going to be out there.
Yeah.
Or, if it was going to be just tramped up, by other users.
Dog
snowshoers,
walkers.
dog walkers.
Yeah, sure.
So I think that it's improved with the expansion of SIMBA's grooming, which is an awesome amenity for the sport. I still would like to see a couple of places that the Nordic Center grooms. Would be awesome if we could end up having access there someday. I still hope that working together on that is something that might happen in the future, because I do think, fat bikes aren't going anywhere. I'm amazed at how many I see out on trail when I ride these days.
Awesome.
Out on wherever I'm riding.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's riding a bike in the cold, in the snow. So, I don't think hundreds of fat bikers are going to take over the Nordic trails. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like you're going to be overrun. But I think, I don't think the sport's going anywhere. I do think it's growing. And there's a few places where it would just be awesome if we could share some of the Nordic trails.
Yeah, well, it seems like I think there's been a change at the Nordic Center too that might be helpful for that as well.
Yeah.
So, going back, so what's the experience like of riding a fat bike for someone who hasn't ridden one? Which includes me, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say. Fat biking is fun. It is cold a lot of the times. No, it's super fun, especially if you're, I always say, if you're a cyclist at heart, it always feels good to pedal a bike, right? I mean, it feels cool. It's that familiar feeling.
Sure.
Fat biking is very condition dependent, which means you can have a blast one day and you can have not such a great time the next day. And I experience that with my rentals a lot.
Is that mostly temperature, or what are the other?
Yeah, softness of snow.
Okay.
If it's snowed and, something's been groomed but it's not set up yet, or it's just too deep. I mean, if it's snowing, it's time to go skiing, right?
Right.
So fat bikes do really well on that, packed, semi-packed surface. I mean, a 5-inch tire will ride through about, say, 4 inches of fluffy new snow easily. It's not there. You get into anything deeper than that, and it's not time to go fat biking. You're gonna just kind of waller out. You just are gonna kind of spin your wheels. It's like trying to ride in too deep of sand.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that packed surface is the most ideal. It feels just like riding a bike. But you can get out into conditions that are too soft, and that's when it becomes really difficult. It can just kind of be a slog. And I always say, like, fat biking's not necessarily like a real fast sport.
I was going to say, what's the pace of a fat bike in general? It's clearly not a race machine necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, sometimes it's going up hills. It's like rock crawling, right? I mean, a low gear, spinning in a low gear and keeping kind of your butt on the seat is how you're going to get up stuff. And what's amazing, though, is I can ride up Snodgrass Mountain Road on my fat bike, even the really steep parts. Mm-hmm. I can ride up those.
Nice.
I've ridden my fat bike up pitches that you're like, what? I can't, there's no way, my tires are going to slip or whatever. And they're really incredible machines. And
surprisingly grippy.
Yeah, they're surprisingly grippy in that respect. And then they're really good for your bike handling skills going downhill. Because they do
Sounds
slide.
like a wink right there.
yeah, that's what I tell people. Because they do slide around a bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, if the pitch is good enough, if the downhill is good enough, and it's a pretty kind of delicate balance between brakes and kind of brakes and no brakes and staying upright. I like to say that fat bikes probably shouldn't even have a front brake on them. Really?
Okay.
I mean, it's just like grabbing your front brake in a pile of gravel. That's what I think will make you fall on a fat bike. Descending and using that front brake, if you're not braking, you're fine. But obviously we go down some steep stuff, so you're going to be braking at some point. But you have to kind of get comfortable with however fast you don't want to go,
around.
kind of sliding the rear end of the bike will kind of move around on you. And kind of just letting that happen.
Sounds like they need to make some way of downshifting the gearing like you do in a car when you're going down a steep road. I don't know how they do that, but that might be... Okay, someone listening, do that.
Yeah.
So what does someone who's an experienced mountain biker like myself in the summertime need to know about riding a fat bike? So especially I'm thinking of the gear. Especially I'm trying to... ski pants do not sound like a good idea to me, but maybe they are. Mm-hmm. Footwear, is this usually on flats?
Yeah.
What do you got?
Yep. And that is one of the toughest things about fat biking is figuring out the right thing to wear. To stay warm, it's a combination of warmth and not being too bulky and feeling like a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man on trying to ride a bike.
Yeah.
So I ride my fat bike on flats, and I don't ride my mountain bike on flats.
Okay. We're talking pedals, by the way, for anyone listening.
Flat pedals. I mean, I know plenty of kind of more like hardcore cyclists, like avid cyclists, I don't know what to say, but that are fat bikers too, that they do choose to clip in, be clipped in. For me, I just like the sensation of being on flats when I'm on my fat bike. I wear a nice warm boot that's not too bulky. I just have like a Columbia boot that's not overly bulky, because that will feel weird if your boots are too big.
My Sorels probably not.
Yeah, Sorels will feel weird, right? And, comes up high enough that you can... A lot of people will wear gaiters.
Okay.
I don't, but I just have a pant that, my boot comes up high enough, my pant comes down over it, and so usually I'm not getting snow in my boots.
Okay.
But, when you're out on a fat bike, you're kind of tromping around in the snow at some point too, which is why I choose to just wear a snow boot instead of a winter cycling shoe, which do exist. I mean, you can get awesome, 45 North is a brand that makes awesome fat bike
I think
gear.
I've seen Lake make some really nice
ones
ones
too. And Lake makes some nice ones too. So you can get good waterproof, weatherproof, insulated boots to clip in with also.
Okay.
But so shoes, keeping your toes warm is honestly, I think, the hardest thing. Fingers and toes, although bar mitts or pogies. Mm-hmm. So people have probably seen them, those big poofy things on the ends of handlebars.
Yeah.
Those are we call those bar mitts or pogies. And they'll save you.
And are you just wearing summer gloves in those, or what?
You can, which is what's really cool about it.
Okay.
So I don't wear a full summer glove unless it's like spring. But like right now, I'm able to wear... The thing about pogies is it allows you to wear a thinner glove for the dexterity of your hands, because you still have a shifter, and you want to be able to move your hands, so you don't want a super bulky glove. And they're just awesome because they block the wind off your fingers. So those, I think bar mitts are necessity on a fat bike. And then the other gear, it's kind of like, it'd be kind of like what you would wear Nordic skiing or, any sort of like I have a pant that's windproof on the front and fleecy on the inside.
Is this a bike pant, or is this actually a ski pant that's thin? Or...
It is a bike pant. It is a Pearl Izumi pant, but it's not. it's really just like a winter training pant. It's something someone who was like a winter runner or something would wear. So it doesn't have a chamois in it. Like I wear a chamois.
Okay.
And then I wear this pant that I know is going to block weather and wind off my legs.
Gotcha.
So you're usually like layering something like that, something kind of soft shell-ish.
Okay.
They make all kinds of winter tights and stuff that have chamois in them. The gear is really cool. It gets really expensive, to be honest, like the real like cycling winter specific stuff, but it's really cool too. It's and it's nice to have the right thing. I figured that out,
Yeah, I could see that. And as a backcountry skier, it's weird. It can be cold, but you get hot when you're working it. I'd have to assume it's the same on a fat bike as when I'm skinning up something that...
Yeah.
It's 10 degrees, and I'm usually just in one layer.
Yeah. I always say... I always start... Yeah. I usually start and end a fat bike ride cold. And I don't know why I always end cold. I think it's because I ride in the afternoons. But you start cold, right? Because it's cold out. So you start layered up. And just like you said, skinning. And then, once you get going, you're working your body, and you're on a fat bike. So you're working, sometimes you're working really hard.
Yeah.
Kind of depending on what you're doing, if you're climbing or if it's a little soft or whatever, but you're riding a bike, so you do get warmed up. So it's that balance of layers. I usually start with a thin down jacket on over, I have this really nice top that's windproof. Once again, it's like that windproof soft shell. Mm-hmm. And that's just key for me, for the warmth. It's fleecy on the inside, but it blocks the wind. It's not as heavy as a jacket. So I usually start with my down jacket on if it's cold enough. And then, but you have it off by Moonridge Lane if you're climbing the rec path from town, and then it's just stowed in a bag on your bike. Or
you usually carry a bag on your bike, or a normal size camelback that you'd use in the summer too, or what's your?
You'll see a lot of fat bikes outfitted with frame bags.
Okay.
For that reason.
Okay.
I don't do a pack on mine. I don't wear a camelback hydration pack, mainly because you feel bulky. You have a lot.
You already have stuff.
You already have a lot of stuff going on. So usually I just have a water bottle cage and then a frame
insulated
bag.
Water bottle then, or does it freeze, or how's that?
It freezes.
Work? Okay.
Yeah, that's one of my inventions that I need to come up with. Even like the insulated bottle.
I was going to say they make those. No,
but you know what freezes is the
drink the nipple.
The valve freezes.
So you got to blow into it like you have to on a camelback, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Or does that still just freeze?
I've had my bottles freeze many times.
And you start with hot water too, right? No, sometimes.
Sometimes I'll do like warm, you know. But I've never had a bottle like freeze solid. But you'll see ice inside your bottle, yeah, for sure. And then if it becomes problematic, it's because that you just can't get it out of the water out of the bottle.
So maybe
it needs like a neoprene cover.
Yeah, they have those. I think,
I'm sure they have them.
Or you just do a thermos, I guess, and you throw it in that pack, and then you just deal with having to stop to drink.
Yeah.
If it's not a race, then who cares?
Yeah.
Well, let's start to switch a little bit and go back to Big Al. So what are some of your thoughts on running a business in Crested Butte and I'm especially thinking about employees and housing expenses and all this other stuff. So what can you tell me about some of that?
Yeah, it is. I love what I do. I love running Big Al's. It has become increasingly more difficult, the employee/housing issue, which I think are one and the same. Mm-hmm. I think anyone living in this town that doesn't understand that the housing situation is directly connected to the employee situation is not paying attention. I never really had trouble. Sure, it's a transient town, so you always have employees come and go.
Sure.
But I never had trouble having enough employees until about 2 or 3 years ago. And that's when I had employees who'd been with me for a couple of years who were, wherever they were living had sold and they were having to move on and not being able to find new housing.
Yeah.
So it was just, and a lot of times we're talking about people like when I moved here in like my mid-20s, and I think a lot of times that kind of demographic of people living in the mountain town, they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going somewhere else then.
Sure.
I mean, they've been here however long, a couple of years, living the kind of ski bum life, and they might want to be here, but if it's that difficult, then they move on. And that's kind of what I've seen. I think last summer, 2 summers ago, I had 3 employees living out of vehicles. And that's kind of normal. I mean, you always have someone who's camping or something, but it seemed that was a lot for one
And it wasn't,
summer.
and it was maybe out of necessity instead of choice.
Yeah. So yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
The employee situation is difficult, for sure. More and more people are coming here, which is great. We live in a tourist economy. Mm-hmm. I knew that when I opened a bike shop.
Dependent on it.
Dependent on it, yeah. It's difficult when you don't feel like you have enough bodies to take care of the volume of people who are walking through your front doors on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That is a challenge. Especially when you want to give great customer service, which is what I have built Big Al's upon. We want to give people great customer service. We want to answer their questions and get them pointed in the right direction and help them out wherever they need. And when you are shorthanded, you feel rushed with customers.
Right.
And that's a bummer.
Right. You're like, here's a map, go figure it out, gotta go. Yeah. That's
So, I mean, I do kind of believe that at some point, because I know I'm not the only one that's happening to, that is having this feeling. I hope that we start to get the housing situation figured out so that doesn't end up biting us in the ass, so to speak.
Yeah.
Hey, come to Crested Butte. Oh, wait, I went to Crested Butte and I couldn't get any service anywhere.
Right.
Because everyone had help wanted signs in the windows.
Right. And we're seeing
I'm not going back there.
Right.
So that aspect has definitely become more difficult in the last couple of years.
Yeah. On the positive side, though, it seems like there's a really good group of business owners all up and down Elk Avenue. You've been mentioned before as a fellow woman entrepreneur, and that's got to be really cool, right? That part of it,
for sure. I do think there's this business community. We care about Crested Butte.
Yeah.
We care about what's happening, and we care about the community. So that's awesome to be a part of. I think it kind of comes down. It's like people are really, we really do care about the future of Crested Butte, and obviously I believe in Crested Butte. I believe in it and love what I do. Even with the struggles that we're having right now with employees, I think we all want to help find solutions, but we're busy. You know what I mean? It's kind of finding that, I've been kind of going through this, kind of racking my brain of like, how do I help more? Like, how do I help solve this problem? And I'm not sure where I fit into that. But yeah, it's a great community, and between the nonprofits that do great work and the businesses that support the community, it's a great thing to be part of.
Starting to wrap it up, but one last question. So thoughts on buying local. So how do you keep your customers, buying through you, and you, I don't know how you can really blame someone if they get online and they find this part and you're like, well, I can't even get that at my cost. And,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So what are your thoughts on that? How do you, I think you already mentioned it with service, but go ahead and give me your answer.
Yeah, for sure. It's tricky, especially in the bike industry. There's a lot of cheap stuff you can buy online. But I think it just comes down to, and I think that's why retail businesses, especially things like bike shops, there's a lot of talk in like the bike shop industry about this. Like you have to create something more. It's more of an experience to have someone come shop with you.
Yeah.
It's the knowledge of the staff. It's just taking the time with someone to talk them through a product, show them options. I think also I try and explain to people, if that subject comes up, why should I buy this from you? Or, people don't really say that, but you're in that situation, you're kind of trying to sell it, like,
sure.
But we're there. I'm there. If you buy a helmet from me and you ride it 3 times and the strap breaks, which happens, You know, I mean, is it ideal? No, but stuff breaks and stuff rips and, whatever. I'm there for you to come to and say, the strap on my helmet broke. I just bought it 2 weeks ago. And I'm going to say, sorry, that happened. Let me take care of it for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it too, is just knowing that, I'm there to help out with any product that you do purchase from me, should there be any issues with it or it needs to be replaced. But you can't really get worked up over people buying stuff online.
Yeah.
I've learned that over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, you have your moments, right? But you can't really. And all you have to do, all I can do is just have cool stuff in my shop. My goal is to have cool products and be knowledgeable about them. And hopefully I'm providing enough knowledge and getting someone excited about a product, or, maybe they see it online, but we have it in the shop so they can feel it and touch it and, make sure it's going to work on whatever they're buying it for, their bike. And I think that's all you can do, is really kind of just try and provide that type of customer service to people.
Yeah.
That's the value. That's the value in shopping local,
Right.
And, I've this really long-standing, my husband's from Vermont, and we were there last year. Quick story. But this long-standing outdoor gear store that, he grew up going to as a kid was closing its doors. And it was kind of a big deal. I mean, it was his mom, sent me the article in the paper about it, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
They were closing up shop. And who knows why they were closing up shop,
Right.
But, it could, but, I said something to his mom, everyone loves to do their online shopping. They love the convenience of it. But at some point, if the hardware store down the street closes its doors and you need a light bulb, on the spot, and there's no one there anymore, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
And I think that's something for people to think about, And I mean, sure, it's convenient, and I have things I have to buy online that I buy online. But it's, I think, local retailers are important.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's. So Crested Butte is home for you and has been for a while. So why do you still choose to make Crested Butte your home?
I love it here. It's a good place to be. I think I had some moment after being here for 5 or some years where I thought about moving to some other mountain town or something and kind of seeing what else was out there. But that was obviously prior to deciding to open the shop. But yeah, I love the small town living of it, I call it, which is strange because I'm kind of I went to school in LA, so I have a part of me that loves to go to a city and feel that urban feeling, and I love the diversity of the city, and I love the all that stuff. But I love calling this place home, and you can always travel and experience all kinds of different stuff like that. But I love getting on the bus and saying hi up and down the roads to people I know, and walking down the street for coffee, and living a couple blocks away from my business, and
it's a pretty good commute.
Yep. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's a good life.
Yeah,
I like being able to get out into the mountains on my mountain bike or my fat bike in the winter. And
where can people learn more about you? What's the website?
BigAlsBicycleHeaven.com.
Is there something I should have asked that I didn't ask that you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that one always stumps people.
Yeah.
And then last question: who else should I interview?
Oh man, I'm sure someone else has said Tuck.
Yep, I have gotten that before.
Man, love him. He's my neighbor. He's got good stories. Yeah.
I got to catch him on the right day. That's what I said the first time, though.
Yeah. Who else? I don't know.
Well, that's a good answer.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
That counts, even though someone else. You didn't ask me why they call me Big Al.
I didn't. So that's what I should have asked you.
Which surprised me.
Okay. Why Big Al?
It's my real family nickname. Sometimes people don't believe me. They think I just made it up for the shop name, although it's a good shop name. But it is my real family nickname. My family's called me that forever. And there's a few stories of why, but essentially I was a gigantic baby.
Okay.
I was 10 pounds, 9 ounces when I was born. And then I proceeded to be a tiny kid. So I was like really little and pretty shy growing up. And really that's really where the nickname came from, as a friend of my dad's started calling me Big Al, kind of trying to like get me out of my shell. You know, hey, come on, Big Al, come on, just get over here and play with the other kids, Big Al. And he told this story at my wedding a couple years ago. It was hilarious. But anyway, so I was this little kid, and of course the nickname mortified me as a kid. I was the youngest. You know, I was the youngest of all the cousins, and I just have one sister, but I was the younger sister, and I was the little kid, and they all called me Big Al, and I hated it. But I learned to embrace it later in life.
There you go. Now it's the name of your store.
There you go. And now it's the name of my shop. So
why Big Al versus Big Ali?
It was always Big Al. Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, good story. Well, thanks so much for chatting with me.
Thank you.
I'll have to try fat biking one of these days.
You will have to.
All right.
We'll get you on one.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Crested Butte is Home podcast. My name is Frank Consella, and my website is crestedbutterealestateagent.com. If you have any questions about Crested Butte real estate, please give me a shout there. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave me a review wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Until next time, talk to you later.